Hey, my name is Elika Bernard. I'm sitting here today with Gina Warren, and you are watching the Audacity. Gina has started and partnered with community members to start two really powerful groups. One is called Sister to Sister. The other is called Brother to Brother. I think Brother to Brother came first, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And so how that started was Mervyn and Larry from the neighborhood still live in the heart of gang territory.
And this is in Del Paso Heights.
In Del Paso Heights, and they were individually doing a lot of mentorship, coming out of their pocket, just talking and working with the hardest core gang affiliated population. And so one day we were talking at Clay Street just about ideas, and somebody had brought up the fact that they should apply for the gang task force grant, but they had never written a grant, and neither had I. But I said, let's do this, because typically you don't get funding. Nobody believes in what you're doing unless it becomes formal. Mm-hmm. And so
But I have a question, because are these people you grew up with?
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, because I was going to ask, usually like when people attain any kind, especially Black people, when we come into the upper class or upper middle class, I've seen where there's like a disconnect, mm-hmm. and we don't often go back to the neighborhoods that we grew up in or anything like that.
That's a whole different. There's roots that run so deep in Del Paso Heights, 40, 50 years of folks who are still there.
What was it like as a kid for you in Del Paso Heights?
Probably the best memories that I can reach back to outside of
Was it a lot different than it is
Way
right
different.
now? What was it like? What did it
So,
look like?
so Del Paso Heights, it was an incredible village. Parents were engaged from Little League to Pop Warner to every sports. They were engaged in all youth sports. They were engaged at school. They could discipline each other's children out of love and concern. We had Mr. Ransom, who used to run what we call a Rooter bus. Actually, so did my father-in-law, A.W., and Mr. Maddox. And so they would pick kids up. If there was a Grant tournament at Grant High School, everybody would meet at a location. There was no cell phones then. You pile into the truck, no seat belts, just like sardines, and you get to the game. And the support was unbelievable. And
it was
after
a thriving
the game,
community.
Oh yeah, and then not economically, mm-hmm. but spiritually. Mm. And so, and then after the game, he'd drop us off one by one at our homes. Because they knew the parents couldn't come a lot of times, and so he ensured that everybody was home safely. And we'd get up in the morning, get to school, and they would have hot peanut butter cookies, chocolate chip cookies, and ice cold milk, and that's what we ate for breakfast. Then we'd line up in front of Miss Pratt's room in the library and make sure we got our free lunch pass, and we'd have spaghetti, and we'd mix it with cornbread, and some throw ranch dressing on it. I mean, it was, and then Mr. Teddy Hayes was the basketball coach for when I was in the 9th grade, because we had 9th grade from mm-hmm. middle school, and the brothers would be in 3-piece suits with a little carnation when we would show up at tournaments, and there was just so high expectations of our achievement, high expectations of our behavior. Yeah. Miss Dorothy Earl would prance around with 4-inch stilettos, and that would put her at about 4'10". But she was no nonsense, and she loved and cared for us. I would come to Saturday school and in the library, and we would have Leslie Campbell, whose daughter now is Kim Davies at Grant High School. She would come from UC Davis. Mm-hmm. Maddie Evans would come from UC Davis. Miss Campbell was in the Manners. Miss Maddie Evans was in the Heights. And they would ensure that we knew we had a vision of what higher learning was. And so we would go to field trips at UC Davis, and they spent time with us, because most of us come from families that didn't have college, who weren't college educated. And so that put us on a pathway of higher learning. of high expectations, and so
and Mount Olive was there.
Oh yeah,
And
there was
Del Paso Union Baptist Church, Mount
all
Calvary,
of those,
Zion.
and then New Testament, even though it was in Highlands, North Highlands. It was all of them were connected. So Pastor Cummings, I mean, there's so many. It ran so deep and still does. Reverend Bernardo.
I lived in Del Paso. I'm not too far from Del Paso Heights. I lived in Del Paso Heights. My dad lived there, and there's always been just such a great sense of pride when the people who grew up there, when they talk about the Heights, they don't talk about it how the news talks about it. Because there's a memory of Del Paso Heights that I think a lot of people didn't get to experience, so they don't know, they don't understand.
Well, the millennials didn't get that.
The millennials. Okay, so what happened?
So I mean, we had Safeway, we had Bank of America, we had Rexall Pharmacy, we had businesses. So we had banks and not just check cashing corners. So Safeway was there and not, the other stores, and
wow, there was a Safeway in Del Paso Heights.
Yeah, because I got caught in between the bars trying to sneak through the thing, and I didn't want to walk around. I ended up and I was like there for like 20 minutes before somebody decided they wanted to help me get out, trying to teach me a lesson. The adults were like, "That's what you get, so you gonna wait there." So I was stuck in between these bars, but that's my memory of Safeway. But we had so many talented athletes. Earl Smith was playing basketball. He was 5'6". McDonald's Hall of Fame. He would have been YouTubed across America. He was so gifted. Robert Harris is best baseball player. We had so many incredible athletes. We had scholars. We had it was a lot, but we were under resourced.
Okay.
So I left Reno. My father's in the military, so we got stationed to McClellan. I attended Dilworth Middle School, which was probably the worst experience of my life because of a lot of the racism that was happening, even in the mid-'70s. It was probably the worst, if not the worst experience of my life, from Lincoln Elementary, 5th grade, all the way through 6th grade when I was at Dilworth. But what I can say is it set a standard for me mentally of what school should look like. We had PE where we had to have fresh clothes every single Monday. We got checked in. We did sports. We did a rotating schedule of engaging academically, engaging physically, and I had never experienced anything like that. I was like, wow, this is incredible. I was doing really well academically because it was my way to drown myself. Because the racism was so bad. And I had a teacher. So people out there, when you make contact, he was a white man named Mr. Truax. He saw me, you know what I mean? He saw the depth of me, but he saw my pain. And he pulled me aside one day and he says, "You're gonna be somebody." He said, "You just gotta hang on." And when he said that to me, it just took me miles because I was struggling. But not academically, I was doing really well, but I was struggling spiritually and emotionally. There was no support there. And so when I got to Del Paso Junior High School, there was no running water. The faucets were rusted. There was just, you can see the difference in resources. The disparity was palpable. But Del Paso Junior High School fed my soul in ways that I can't even describe.
What happened?
So what happened is I left for college in '83. So in between that time and the late '80s is when crack cocaine came through. How it got there, everybody has their own idea and perspective of that. But then with that came the gangs. And I remember a sister coming up to me at the multicultural festival that my husband was hosting, the very first one. And she said, "I need to talk to you about the crack cocaine and what happened. Gina, I need to talk to you." And she said it was like a tidal wave that came through here and wiped out our families. And she said, nobody knew what to do. I was a mother. I didn't know what to do. Nobody knew what to do. And I remember that moment because it literally took my breath away to hear somebody describe it in that way. And So when we look back at everything and people that I grew up with that got caught up, their parents got caught up, and so that's 2 generations, and then people my age had kids, and then their kids had kids. That's 4 generations.